everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Autumn and today I am going to be outlining my NaNoWriMo project. So it is October 19th, and besides writing out snippets of the story, brainstorming this story, I have not done any outlining. And I'm really not worried. This project, with the whole brainstorming process, has come just so much more natural, and I don't know if it's a change of genre. I don't really know what it is. I'm really not concerned that I only have, 12 days left to outline this project before I have to attempt to write 50,000 words. I'm really not worried, I promise. So what I mean by just brainstorming this project, over the last month and a half-ish, maybe a little bit more, any little idea, any big idea that I have that's related to this story, whether it be plot-wise, character-wise, scenes, if there's a scene that I've been seeing or thinking about, I write that down, or anything that has to do with the magic system or world building, I have just been throwing into a Google document. That document is quite long now. I have a lot of ideas, a lot of things that probably won't be included in the story because they're original rough ideas and I haven't quite worked them out yet, but that's what I want to do in this video. I want to start laying out all of these ideas, start building my characters, and focus on getting my plot established throughout the story, as well as some of the other subplots. I know I'm a little short on time with plotting out this story, but the things that I'm going to really be focusing on my little checklist, I am just going to run through with you guys. And this is not all something I'm going to do in this video, but over the next couple of weeks, I need to establish the story's promise, the story's progress, and the story's payoff. If you've ever watched any of Brandon Sanderson's writing lectures, which I will leave a link down below, because if you have not watched them, you definitely need to. He introduces and he talks about the writing craft in a beautiful way, and I love the way that he talks about these three things, and he calls them the 3 Ps. I think maybe the 3 Ps of storytelling, which is your promise, progress, and payoff. I'm not going to talk about that here because Brandon Sanderson does a great job explaining that, and he's way more qualified to talk about the craft itself versus me. So it's linked down below if you need specifics on that. But I want to establish my story's 3 Ps. I need to create a whole character list. Any character that I've thought about with this story, that I've written out with this story, or any potential character, I need to just create a list of all of those people. That doesn't mean name them all. For example, I need the witch, I need the mom, I need the dad, I need the animal companion, I need the main character, her brother, and the other 2 people that are part of their band. Those 8 people that I just listed, none of those people have names right now. I need to just write them out. I'm gonna put them down as that. As I see fit, I will create names for them. Now, the next couple of things I'm gonna talk about, we're gonna graze over right now, and plotting, because I don't wanna spend too much time working on these things, and I'll explain that in just a second. I need to establish the world's magic, the witch's magic, and the music's magic. That's part of world building. I'm very funny about outlining the setting, world building, and the magic system of a story in a first draft, only because I know it's gonna change. I don't want to spend the next 12 days focusing on a magic system and a world building that doesn't have characters or a plot line. While all 3 of those things are very important, your characters, your plot, and your setting / world building, all 3 of them are very important. I understand that. What I like to focus on are my characters, establishing my characters, their motives, their flaws, their character arcs, the meat, what are they providing to the story, the plot, what is the plot, are there any subplots, and then the final one, which is the world building, which is how they're gonna go on their adventure, where in the world are they gonna go, and I'm making this like they're in a fantasy world traveling, okay? That snake motion, they were traveling like how Frodo goes on an adventure, right? The magic system and the world building, to me, comes last. I need to establish characters and plot before I spend too much time working on world building and magic. I need to have some type of understanding of the world's magic, the magic that this music has in the world, and my witch's magic. But other than that, that's all I'm really kind of worried about right now in the world building, slutting / magic system area. For my main plot of the story, I want to make sure I hit all of the beats for this story. And if you're not sure what I mean by hitting all of the beats, I'm referring to Save the Cat writes a novel, and there are certain beats in the story that is highly recommended to have as you either plot out your story or a story needs in general. And I want to make sure that my main plot hits all of those important beats of a story. I want to have an idea of my subplots. I need to plot out all of my subplots or plot out most of them. When I'm not focused on the main plot, I can have some side plot action as I'm writing this story. The two final things I want to work on with this story is I want to break down the acts. So in the past, the way I've thought about my acts is using that 3-act story structure. I want to potentially try it a little bit different this time around and try the 4-act story structure. I'll leave some videos linked down below if you're curious about the 4-act story structure. Again, I am not qualified to explain and to go into depth with all of that stuff, but I will leave resources down below if you're curious about that. The reason why I want to switch from a 3-act story structure to a 4-act is I've heard a 4-act story structure is a little bit stronger or is a much better visual when you're plotting out your story and with helping once you get to the midpoint and you're trying to get from like the midpoint to the rest of the story. So I'm curious about how that is, if I'm going to like a 4-act story structure. We're going to be leaning more towards a 4-act story structure while I'm plotting out this story versus a 3-act story structure. Because I am plotting out this story with the final draft being 50,000 words, I like to break up my acts using word counts because that makes so much more sense in my mind that I would prefer to focus on starting the first act and thinking to myself, okay, I need to get to 15,000 words and then I'm finished with the first act. And then once I hit the second act, then I know I have to get to maybe 45,000 words. These are just rough estimates, okay? Like I'm just throwing out numbers, but I hope this is making sense. And then focus on hitting maybe 45-ish thousand words in my second act and then having my third act be about 5,000 words. That's not exactly how I want to structure this story, but it just makes sense in my head, okay? I see a bell curve in my head and I don't think I explained it very well. So this next point is going to be referring back to Save the Cat and Save the Cat beat sheet. I want to make sure my chapters and the scenes and where the beats are, if they're going to be multiple scenes in one beat. I just want to make sure I have enough scenes for certain beats of the story. And I know it's not going to be exact and every story is not going to fit perfectly into any type of outlining method. And this is why I use multiple outlining methods. I didn't specify that at the beginning. The way I outline is weird and it's sporadic and it's all over the place, but it's been working for me because I have written 3 first drafts using my crazy outlining ways. So something somewhere works. The last thing I want to focus on is my plot grid. I used a plot grid for the last story I wrote and it saved my ass and I want to use it again. If time permits, I want to write out a plot grid. If you're not sure what a plot grid is, again, I will leave that linked down below if you're curious, if you want to know what it is, if you want to know more about it. There are way more qualified people to talk about a plot grid than me, so I will leave videos for that linked down below as well. That's what I have going on. This week, I have created a little mini to-do list based off of everything I just talked about. For this vlog, it's gonna be a 2-day vlog. I'm gonna do a little bit of work today plotting and outlining the story, and we're gonna come back tomorrow and we're gonna finish. We're gonna do a little bit more. We're not gonna finish anything because I have quite a bit of outlining to do for this project. How I outline is a little confusing. I don't focus on just the plot and then move on to focusing on just the characters. And then I don't just focus on world building. I kind of do it all at once. So today I'm blocking off 2 hours to plot out my story. But what I'll do is I'll pick something to start with. Like I'll start shifting through all of the bullet points that I have in my Google document. I'm gonna start writing out all of those ideas on index cards. As I get more inspiration or more possible ideas, I will continue to write them down. I'll continue to plot, create characters, and then once I have all of my scene cards written out with all of my potential story ideas, then I'll start focusing on the plot and asking the why does this matter? Who is going to be in this part of the story? What exactly is this scene going to be about, or this chapter or this part of the story? And I'm going to be outlining and writing out all of that stuff. But as I'm writing out that stuff, if I have a character idea or an idea for another part of the story, I'll finish up the idea that I'm working on and then I'll bounce to the next topic. So I do a lot of bebopping around. For today, I really want to focus on the scene cards, writing out all of the scenes, work a little bit on the plot, get some of my characters established, so creating that character list, getting some of the names written out for these characters, some of their key characteristics. I also want to establish those 3 Ps. So the story promise, the story progress, and the story payoff. So that's what I'm going to be working on today. I have been outlining for about an hour all of the ideas that I have in my Google document. I have been writing out on index cards, and as I've been writing them out on index cards, if I am asking myself, why is this happening, or why does this matter to the story, I have been adding it to the bottom of whatever scene or idea it is, whatever I have. And then if I'm running out of space, I'm writing it a little bit more detail on the back. It's been going well. I have some names for some of my characters. I have been writing a little bit in my notebook. I didn't talk about my notebook in the first little update intro into this vlog, but I have a new notebook. I like to have a new notebook for each of my stories. Even though I never end up using the entire journal, I like to have a new one for each story. I've been going through some of these ideas and breaking them down into what act they would best fit in. Oh, the camera battery's about to die. Hang on one second. I don't know how long we're gonna have with this battery pack either, because it says it's like half full, but you never know with these batteries. It could say half full and then die in 5 minutes. We'll speed this along. I don't remember what I was last saying. I'm hoping in my next writing sprint session for the next hour, I am going to continue to write out all of the plot points that I have, all of the ideas that I have here, and I'm hoping to start working on the story payoff, which is going to be the ending. I am really wanting to get that taken care of, or really start to hammer what I want this ending to be, where I want the characters to end, the payoff, what my characters learned throughout the story. I need to make sure that I get that taken care of. I'll probably bounce back to some of the characters as well and figure out what their motives are, their quirks, their flaws, and things like that. So that's what I'm gonna work on now, and hopefully within the next hour I can have a little bit of battery power to give you guys a final update of the day. But wish me luck, and I will see you in an hour. Today's final writing update. We know I was having issues with my camera, so I came in here to give the final update because my chargers and my camera were in here. Final update of today and what I accomplished with outlining my fantasy project. I ended up writing out the 3 Ps, the story's promise, progress, and payoff. I wrote those out. I have 2 or 3 paragraphs for each of those. And if you're familiar with Brandon Sanderson's writing lectures, with his story's promise, there's also a tone promise that he talks about for the story. And I wrote out what I want the tone to be for this story. I've mentioned this before, where I want the story to be very lighthearted and humorous, low stakes and cozy. So those were all the things that I wrote down for the tone and the atmosphere of the story. And that's also mainly a reminder to myself, only because the stories I've written in the past tend to be on the darker side and tend to be, I don't want to say gory, but we go to certain dark places. I just wanted to give myself a friendly reminder that this story is not like that. We're not going to those places, even though there are topics and elements in this story that are problematic and things that are going to be discussed. We're taking a different approach with those topics. I wrote this out just to remind myself not to get too carried away with wanting a lot of dark elements in the story. So I worked on that for the tone promise. I worked on the story's promise, so what I'm promising the reader at the beginning. Then I actually wrote out the payoff first, and that is why the reader is reading this in the first place. So I wrote that out. It can all be subject to change. I don't want that, what I just said, I don't want that to take over too much of the story. I don't want to tell myself, oh, well, I can change that later if it doesn't work, because that's been my problem in the past, where I'm too open to change and I change the story too much. I'm really confident with how I have my stories pay off, and then I worked on the story promise. The final one I worked on is the story's progress. So as we go through the story, what is keeping the reader turning the page? What are elements of this story that are going to be interesting enough to keep the reader engaged and to help me write this story for NaNoWriMo and to keep it engaged and lighthearted and humorous and have that same tone that I want throughout the story. Today, I've been seriously focusing on those things, the 3 Ps. I have been also focusing on some of those other subplots. I wrote out my main plot of the story and then some of the subplots that I want throughout the story as well. I have my main plot, and so far I have 4 subplots. I don't want to get too carried away with these subplots, since the story for the first draft, I am just aiming it for it to be 50,000 words. I don't have 150,000 words to play around with a whole bunch of different plot lines, different subplots, and things like that. So I'm trying to keep it bare minimum. I don't want so many plot lines that it's just a free-for-all. So I think I'm gonna stick with the main plot and those 4 subplots. I think that's what I just said, 4 subplots. That's what I'm gonna stay with for now. If I feel like there's one that might fit the story better, I can take out one of the ones I have and put in a new one. So far, that's what I have. I have some of my characters laid out, not a whole lot. I wrote them out on the characters list. I hadn't really spent a whole lot of time trying to find names for these characters, but I did find a few names for my 2 main characters, the witch of the story, and a love interest. So I'm really pleased. I have 4 characters that have 4 names, and I'm pretty stoked about that. That is the final update for today. That's going to be it for my outlining today, and I will see you all tomorrow. Welcome to day 2 of plotting my NaNoWriMo project. I am going to do my writing in my office today. So we're gonna work for about an hour, see how much work I get done. I think I talked about this in day 1 of what my plans were for today, but let me get everything set up. I will give specifics with what I'm working on. Today's to-do list. I want to go back and reread my 3 Ps, which I talked about yesterday. I want to go through those, add anything, take anything out, do whatever kind of tweaking I need to do. But for the most part, my 3 Ps are done. I also want to work through the ending of the novel and work a little bit backwards. Start with my ending, work through Act 3 into Act 2. I want to hit that midpoint, know what my midpoint is, what I want to be happening at that midpoint, which would be about 25,000-ish words into the story. Then I want to work all the way backwards through Act 2 to Act 1 and start working on that inciting incident. Okay, just make your entrance, buddy. So I was trying to keep my cool, but as you just saw, we got a cat, but we're not gonna worry about that at this moment. I also want to continue to work through my characters. I need to work on their dynamics with each other and character list their key characteristics, which are flaws, their quirks. You okay over there? And anything else that's specific for my characters for the story. And I know for a draft 1 that might be a little difficult to solidify right now, but I'm gonna work through it and try and work on my characters and then their dynamics with each other. If time permits, I would like to structure and outline some of those key scenes that I want to happen in the story. These scenes are the ones that have sparked my interest in writing this story. ones that I keep thinking about when I think of Project Traveling Bards. So I want to take the time to outline those specific scenes. So when I am in the thick of it for NaNoWriMo, I will have some of these key scenes pretty much already outlined and have an idea of where I want these scenes and chapters to go. I'm about to sneeze. Don't chew on that. No. I know, not allowed to have any fun in an apartment. So that is what I'm going to work on. And if I don't get to the outlining the scenes today, it's not going to be too big of a deal because I want to have a plotting vlog too and work on outlining those vivid scenes again. So if I don't get to them today, it's totally fine. We'll just revisit them tomorrow. Are you coming to say hi? Well, I'm gonna get to work. You might see him throughout the vlog. We'll do intros later. Is an hour later. I have made some progress, not quite as much progress as I would have liked with my characters, but I wrote out my ending. What I've done with writing out my ending, I have my 5 storylines, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. So my 5 potential storylines. I have written 1 or 2 sentences for the ending of each of those plot lines. With me saying that, not all of these plot lines are going to be wrapped up at the very end. There's one of them that's not gonna be wrapped up. I have just been going through and trying to work through how I want the ending for each of those subplots to be. So while I'm saying the ending, which is the absolute ending, but I'm also doing 1 or 2 lines for each of my subplots. I have not written out the midpoint yet. I have an idea of what I want the midpoint to be, but I think I need to brainstorm and think about it a little bit more, only because what I'm thinking I want the midpoint to be, I need to make sure after that midpoint enough storyline to continue the story on to the ending. What I want the midpoint to be, I really like, but it makes me nervous because I just don't know if I have enough story or enough that will happen after that midpoint to keep it going. I'm almost wondering if it needs to be something that it's a catalyst maybe into Act 3 and then find another key point that will end up being my midpoint. I'm thinking that might be the route I need to go because I don't think there's going to be quite as much story after what I'm wanting to be the midpoint is, so it might have to shift and be something else. But I'm also working on the inciting incident. I feel like this is pretty simple. I feel like when I did my brief description of the story and in my announcement video, it's pretty obvious what the inciting incident is going to be. I also did, a smidge of world building. I needed a name for a place and I did a little bit of Googling trying to figure out what I wanted this place to be called. I've got a name, it's temporary, but that's what I have. In this video, I did not end up working on my characters. I think I am gonna have to do another writing session tonight. I probably won't end up vlogging that because I might end the vlog here. Well, not might, I am. I'm about to end it in like 3 minutes. So I didn't end up working on the characters, the character dynamics, and anything like that in this hour. What I plan on working on for characters is establishing empathy. So what is making my audience like this character or dislike this character? What is a key part of this character's personality that is going to make people care? The next description for my characters is going to be establishing a root interest. What about what my character wants? How is it interesting to me and the reader? So that's something I need to establish, and this can be motivation. What do they want and why can't my character have it? And then and their personal connection to the plot. Because right now I feel like I have a lot of plot and not a whole lot of character development. Finally, I think the three most important things is my main character and then some of these other characters. How are they going to change throughout the story? What are their quirks and their personality? I have a lot of work that I need to do for my characters. Everything I just talked about, that is what I'm going to do when I'm going to be working on my characters. Those are the questions I'm going to be asking myself, and I might be pulling some information from other sources too, like Save the Cat and Story Genius, but everything I just listed I did not come up with on my own. These are all from Brandon Sanderson's writing lectures, which you can find on YouTube, and the specific one that I was just talking about is lecture 9, which is about characters, and I think he has 2 lectures on characters. But that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, but let me know how your Preptober is going, and if you are outlining, let me know how you're outlining. I want to thank everybody so much for watching this video, and if you're not part of my writing journey, I would absolutely love to have you. Let me know what you're going to be working on down in the comments below so I can cheer you on as we enter NaNoWriMo. But again, I am Autumn Ashley, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.